I am Anne, 36, and living in a quiet corner of Perth. My small, weathered house has a cracked step we keep forgetting to fix. It's not fancy, but there's a crooked lemon tree out back, generous and sweet. In spring, the blossoms fill the kitchen with a soft, nostalgic scent. We're not rich, not poor, just comfortably in the middle. I still check price tags, but I buy flowers when I feel I deserve beauty. I work part-time at a local bookshop where the shelves are dusty and the music is soft. The brass bell above the door chimes with every visitor, creating a peaceful atmosphere. It's simple, but it suits me perfectly. And me? I used to be pretty. Maybe I still am. People say I have kind eyes and a quiet smile, but sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder, where did she go? The girl who wore red lipstick just to feel bold. The woman who laughed at her own jokes and believed that love, real love, could fix anything. I've been married 8 years, to a man who once made my heart skip. A man who now barely sees me, not just with his eyes, but with his heart. And one rainy Tuesday evening, as the sky turned the colour of bruised gold, I stood by the window and I whispered a question I never thought I'd ask. Do I still love my husband? We weren't always this quiet, not always this distant. I remember the day we met like a splash of colour on a grey canvas. I was in a hardware store, debating between 2 shades of pale blue paint for my tiny apartment. The one with the crooked windows and the floor that creaked every time I walked. He was there with his father, fixing a leaking tap. Tall, a little awkward, with eyes that seemed to smile before his lips even moved. When he caught my gaze, his smile was shy, but real. Our first conversation was about paint. How strange that something so simple would lead to everything. He offered to help me reach a can on the top shelf. Our fingers brushed for a moment, and in that touch, I felt something warm spread inside me. Our first date was over coffee in a tiny cafe that smelled of cinnamon and old books. I was nervous, stumbling over my words, but he laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones. And that made me feel brave. We talked for hours, about dreams, about music, about places we wanted to see. He told me about the beaches he loved as a kid, and I shared my secret wish to write a book one day. I still remember the way sunlight caught his hair when he smiled, like the whole world was holding its breath just for us. In those early days, love felt simple, bright as the morning sun, and endless as the sky stretching out above us. Marriage was warm at first, like a soft blanket that wrapped around us, making the world outside feel quiet and far away. He gave the best hugs, the kind that made my shoulders drop, my breathing slow. He'd hold me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever known. Every night, I'd fall asleep in the crook of his arm, safe, loved, completely his. Sometimes, I'd wake in the middle of the night, finding his hand resting gently on my waist, like even in his sleep, he didn't want to let me go. He made coffee for me every morning, just the way I liked it, with 2 sugars and a dash of oat milk. If I slept in, he'd leave it on the bedside table, warm and waiting. He never said it was love, but it was in every little thing he did. We shared everything. Sunday mornings under the covers, rainy days spent watching old movies and eating toast, midnight grocery runs, just because we could, slow walks by the river, dreaming about our future together, what we'd name our children, where we'd grow old together. Even the ordinary things felt magical, folding laundry, cooking dinner, because we were doing it together. He used to kiss me on the forehead before leaving for work. I'd watch him from the window as he walked to the car, wondering how I'd ever gotten so lucky. It wasn't perfect. No love ever is. But it was real. And for a while it felt like it would last forever. But slowly, the magic started to fade. Dreams turned into chores. Conversations became logistics and schedules. Laughter grew quieter. Touch became less frequent. And the warmth, well, it began to feel like a soft glow from a candle fading in the wind. There were signs. Little ones I chose not to see. Or maybe I saw them, but I didn't want them to be true. He started sleeping with his back to me, no arm wrapped around my waist, no soft breath on the back of my neck, just distance, cold and unfamiliar. His phone stayed face down on the bedside table, and he smiled less. When I asked how his day was, he'd say, "Fine," and nothing more. Sometimes I'd sit beside him on the couch, close but not connected. I'd lean gently into him, hoping to feel that familiar pull. But his eyes, they looked through me like I was just furniture in the room. And that's what hurt the most. Not the silence, not the missed conversations, but the feeling that I was becoming invisible. I used to live for his hugs, the way he'd pull me into his chest after a long day, press a soft kiss to my forehead, and whisper, "You're my favorite person." I used to fit perfectly into the curve of his body at night. We'd fall asleep tangled together like ivy, waking with arms still wrapped, refusing to be apart. Now I lie awake on the edge of the bed, watching the shadow of his back, wondering if he even notices the empty space between us. Rain taps on the window, soft and steady, like the echo of my own sadness. And I wonder, how did something so beautiful become this? It didn't happen all at once. The truth crept in, like a draft under a door, cold and unnoticed, until suddenly, everything felt wrong. The first time I saw her. It was late afternoon, and I was walking home from work. A long shift at the bookshop, my feet aching, my mind already turning to what we might have for dinner. As I turned the corner by the cafe, I saw him, my husband. He was walking with a woman. She was tall, graceful, her hair falling in perfect waves down her back, her laugh carrying in the warm air like music I didn't recognize. They weren't holding hands, they weren't touching, just walking, talking comfortably close. I paused for a second. Something stirred in my stomach, a tight twist, but I shook it off. She could be a colleague, I told myself. A friend. I didn't ask him about it later. Didn't want to sound insecure. Didn't want to be that kind of wife. But it stayed with me. A week later, it happened again. I had called in sick, but decided to get some groceries and clear my head. As I walked past the art gallery on River Street, there they were, together again. Not just walking. This time, they were sitting close on a bench. Her hand rested on his arm, not playfully, not briefly. It was lingering, intimate, the kind of touch that says, "I know you." He smiled at her, that smile I hadn't seen in months. His eyes were soft, familiar in a way they hadn't been with me for so long. She leaned in and said something, and he laughed. The kind of laugh that shakes your whole body. The kind he used to save for me. I stood across the street, frozen. The shopping bag slid down my wrist, but I didn't even notice. The world around me blurred. Cars passed, birds chirped, but I could hear none of it. In that moment, my chest felt hollow. Not broken, not yet, but something inside me was slipping. Slowly, quietly. I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. He came home late, said work had run long, and I nodded. I smiled. I kissed him goodnight, but I knew something precious was no longer ours. He had given it away, bit by bit, to someone else. That night, he came home to the smell of warm soup and freshly baked bread. I had set the table, lit a candle, trying, hoping, pretending. He smiled, a small, polite smile, like the one you give a stranger holding a door open. We sat across from each other, the flickering candle casting shadows on the walls, shadows that looked more like strangers than lovers. He talked about work, the same way you read a shopping list. I nodded, stirred my soup, trying to keep my hands from trembling. I wanted to scream, to ask him if her perfume still lingered on his coat, to demand to know if he thought of her while sitting across from me, but I didn't. I smiled and asked if he wanted more bread. Later, when he thanked me for dinner, I told him it was nothing. He kissed my cheek that night, and I felt nothing. No warmth, no safety, just distance. I lay beside him, the space between us louder than any silence I'd ever known. I stared at the ceiling. He fell asleep within minutes, his breathing even and untroubled. And I broke. Not in a dramatic way. No sobbing or fists pounding pillows. Just tears, slow and quiet. sliding down my face, soaking into the pillow beneath me. I didn't sleep. I watched the soft glow of the hallway light under the door, listened to the wind outside, and thought about how we once loved each other so fully, how I used to fall asleep in his arms, laughing at nothing. Now, I couldn't even feel his heartbeat beside me. The next day, I went to work like nothing happened, helping customers find novels they'd never finish, smiling when they complimented the shop's scent. But in the bathroom, behind the locked door, I slid down the wall and cried into my hands. Not just for the betrayal, but for the slow death of a love I had believed in. I cried in the car before driving home, into a scarf while doing laundry. And worst of all, I cried in the middle of the night, my hand hovering above his back, too afraid to touch him, too broken to pull away. I was crumbling bit by bit, and he didn't even see it. I remember the kind of laugh that made people turn around and smile with me. I used to sing while doing dishes, wear red lipstick on random Tuesdays just because it made me feel bold. I danced in the kitchen when no one was watching. Where did she go? Now, I wear clothes that blend in, keep my voice soft to avoid startling anyone. I eat in silence, moving like a guest in my own home. And worst of all, I stopped touching myself with love. No gentle care when applying lotion, no admiring my reflection, no joy in being me. I leaned closer to the sink, searching for the spark I once carried in my eyes. It was faint, but it was there. I felt something stir inside me. Not anger, not sadness, but a quiet ache. The ache of someone who knows she deserves more than this. I whispered, "Where are you?" The mirror didn't answer, but something inside me did. Something soft, stubborn, and waiting. I picked up my old lipstick, the same red I wore when I believed I was worthy of love, even my own. I didn't put it on that day, but I held it. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I might come back to life. 2 days passed after I saw them on the bench. 2 long days where I carried the truth in my chest like a stone. Heavy, cold, unspoken. But on the third night, after dinner, when the dishes were done and the kettle had finished boiling, I turned to him. He was sitting on the couch, legs stretched out, phone in hand, smiling at something on the screen. I stared at him for a moment. That familiar face, the one I had loved through everything. Laughter, illness, quiet mornings, stormy nights. And all at once, I missed him. Even though he was just a few steps away, I missed him in the deepest way. I sat beside him and asked softly, "Who is she?" He blinked, didn't speak. His phone screen dimmed and went black. He turned to me slowly, his lips parting as if searching for a lie, but none came. Instead, he said quietly, "I didn't mean for it to happen." He looked down at his hands, the same hands that once cupped my cheeks, whispering I was his whole world. Those hands slid my wedding ring onto my finger, trembling with nervous love. "I felt invisible," he said, and I wanted to scream because I understood. I knew that feeling too, being seen, being touched, being wanted, but I never sought it elsewhere. "I feel invisible too," I whispered, my voice breaking on the word too. A long pause filled with the ghosts of old memories lingered between us. The day we danced in the kitchen to a love song, tracing circles on my shoulder while I read at night. I kissed his forehead before he left for work, just so he'd feel my love even after the door closed. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the lines on his face, the tiredness behind his eyes, and maybe regret. We tried. We tried to pretend it could be fixed. We went to counselling, sat through long silences with a stranger in the room, talking around the real things, not through them. We promised we'd be different. We said all the right words, but words without truth are just noise. Eventually, we stopped trying. The house stayed the same, but the warmth had left it. We lived like strangers, polite, distant, rehearsed. He slept in the guest room. I stopped cooking. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. It came in moments. Small, fragile, barely noticeable at first. At first, it was just about survival. Getting out of bed, making tea, taking a shower, even if I didn't feel like I deserved to feel clean. But slowly, the light began to find me again. One of the first calls came from Emma, an old friend I hadn't seen in months. She said she'd been thinking about me, had a feeling I wasn't okay. She didn't ask for details. She just said, "I'm coming over and I'm bringing cake." And she did. We sat on my back porch under the lemon tree, drinking tea, eating too much chocolate cake. I didn't say much, but she did. She talked about her kids, her awful boss, her new grey hairs. And somehow, I laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in weeks. That laughter broke something open in me, and I cried. Ugly, messy, shoulder-shaking tears. She didn't flinch. She just pulled me into her arms and whispered, "You're not alone, Anne. Not now. Not ever again." Then came Lila. She dragged me to a women's circle at the community centre. I didn't want to go. I nearly cancelled. But she said, "Just come. You don't even have to speak. Just breathe with us." So I did. I sat in a room filled with women I didn't know, but who all carried their own quiet storms. Some had lost husbands. Some had left them. Some had stayed too long. And we shared stories. We lit candles. We cried. We held hands in silence. And somehow, in that stillness, I began to feel whole again. We started meeting every Thursday. Tea, candles, sometimes music, sometimes wine. Always love. They reminded me that being broken didn't mean I was unworthy. It just meant I had lived deeply, loved hard, and survived something that could have ended me. I began painting again. Not well, but with feeling. Bright colours, bold strokes, like I was reclaiming space on the canvas of my own life. I started journaling at sunrise. Long walks by the river with no destination. I even bought myself flowers every Sunday. Not to impress anyone, just because I deserved beauty in my space. Little by little, I began to speak more kindly to myself. To look in the mirror and say, "You're still here. You still matter." There were still hard days. Nights when I missed the sound of his voice, or wondered what might have been. But they passed more gently now. They no longer owned me. I was reclaiming something I thought I'd lost forever. Myself. So, do I still love my husband? I loved him with all my heart, through every laugh, every storm, every quiet moment. But today, I love myself more. Loving myself means knowing when to hold on and when to let go. If you're still listening, thank you for holding space for my story. Maybe you've felt something like this, carrying a pain you've never said aloud. Or maybe you're just beginning to remember the woman you were, before the silence, before the heartbreak. Wherever you are, please remember, You are not alone. You are not broken. You are allowed to begin again. If this story touched something in you, if it helped you feel seen, even for a moment, I'd be so grateful if you'd like, share, or subscribe. Not for numbers, but so maybe, just maybe, another woman finds this when she needs it most. Your voice matters. Your story matters. You matter.